I'm going to try that.
Yeah.
In fact, probably in about 15 minutes.
There's a middle ground, you know.
So today's the 25th of January 2024, depending on when people are watching this. But if we were to open up Luna in your studio today, what would you have on your tubus?
Oh, okay. Interesting. Okay, so first of all, first plugin would be Brainworks BX3, mainly because I like first in the chain, I do a little high pass, right? So, 6 or 12, maybe just at like 30, 30 or 35, just a safety high pass, nothing that's, really digging in at least yet. The reason why I like the BX3 is I like the mono maker. I like to tighten up the low end, right? So I'll use that elliptical filter, the mono maker, to collapse the low end up until, typically 150 or something like that. Sometimes I go higher. And that just sort of solidifies the low end and keeps any stereo information from sneaking through there. From there, gosh, and because it's not always the same. So I'm kind of giving you some of the things that I typically do, but that's almost always first. And then after that, it's primarily going to be some sort of EQ typically. And so favorites for me are the Hitsville Mastering EQ. I absolutely adore the Hitsville Mastering EQ. It is super gentle and super musical. If you put it on a scope, if you put it on an analyzer, its curves are huge. They're big and gigantic, big sweeping curves that you probably wouldn't do with a regular EQ. But because I'm not distracted, like I don't use EQs that have graphic displays. I don't use them ever. That's of no interest to me whatsoever. So I use Pultex, I use 1084s, I use the SSL E channel.
If you've enjoyed this video so far, please take a quick second to hit that like button. It really helps out me and the channel more than you think.
So it might be the Hitsville Mastering is often there. Chandler, the Chandler stereo, the Mastering EQ can be there. Massive Passive, depending on the track, can also be next in the chain. After that, I'll do typically a bus compressor, which for me, the SSL G compressor or Neve 2254. Absolutely love the 2254 on the main out. Sometimes Capital Mastering compressor gets used in that option. So I'm trying to think if there's any other stereo compressor. Oh, 2500. I have the real one right here. I have a real API 2500 right here. But I'll use the plug-in because I've done the shootouts. It sounds the same. And so sometimes it'll be the 2500. And then after that, I'll typically do I'll do the free Ozone Imager 2. I like the Ozone Imager 2. And I like to put that in front of the next plugin, which for me is always the ATR 102. Always, always, always. And I like the Imager in front of the ATR because the ATR has a little bit of crosstalk and it kind of mitigates a little bit of the widener and just kind of, to my ear, it sort of it organicizes. I don't know if that's a word, but it makes that Imager feel a little more organic. So I like to put that in front of the 102. By the way, I use the 102 plugin almost always over the extension. I'll use the extension on buses. I like it on buses, but on the main out, I prefer the control I get by putting ATR exactly where I want it. As I mentioned earlier in this interview, I sometimes will also do, sometimes the Culture Vulture is put in there, and that would be right after the BX, but before the EQ, to just kind of set some glue in there. And then after the ATR, I use the DMG Limitless is my favorite limiter. And so that's the order I like to do them in. And so what I do is and here's something that I highly, highly recommend is don't work with the limiter turned on. I'm a big proponent of that. I don't think you should mix into a brick wall limiter. I have it on there, but I keep it bypassed the majority of the time. And so that way, while I'm working, I can periodically go over there, turn it on, and see how my mix reacts to it, and then make some determinations, turn it right back off. And the idea there is I always print my mixes without the limiter on them. And I use the ATR 102s, record and reproduce to like gain stage through. That's the final thing. For me, I used a real ATR 102 pretty much every day throughout the 1990s and into the early 2000s. It was modified by John Klett. and it was a beautiful, beautiful machine. So I'm very intimately aware of what ATR 102s do. And to me, ATR 102 is the last thing in the chain, because that's what I did for so many years. And that to me is the print. I print my mix. And by the way, that stereo bus chain doesn't go on. I have it all populated but bypassed, and I don't turn it on until I'm probably 60 to 80% of the way done the mix. In other words, I challenge myself. I challenge myself to get it sounding as good as I possibly can without the stereo bus chain. And then I'll start to put it on and see how it enhances and things can react. If I find that I'm leaning too much on the stereo bus, I'll bypass it, rework the individual tracks a little bit, and then put it back on. And I find that is, I know a lot of people like to work the other way. A lot of people like to establish the bus chain and mix into it. I've not found that works for me, simply because for me, if you listen to my mixes, you can bypass the entire stereo bus chain and it still sounds good. You put the stereo bus chain in and it's a better version of an already good mix. I feel strange when I bypass everything and I'm still not happy with the mix. Like, that feels strange to me. I want to be happy without it, but understand that there's room for improvement. And when I put it on there, those improvements come to fruition. Like, so if I can bypass it and my mix holds up, I'm good. I put it back on. So if the last sometimes 20 to 30% of the mix is done with it on, but that first 50, 60% I feel like is critical to do without it, simply because then I'm challenged, right? I'm challenged.
I was going to say, yeah.
I'm challenged to do it. And I know when I'm doing my drum bus, I can say, you know what? I'm 80% of the way there, and my 2 bus is going to get me over the finish line. I know that after having done it. But anyway, that's my philosophy on that.
A massive thank you to Drew from Universal Audio. And if you'd like to watch the full interview about all things UA, the interview will now magically appear just here. I'm Matt from Distant Sun Studios. Cheers.